It is crazy to me how many TV shows I love that nobody else ever seemed to care about.
So today's episode is about canceled TV, all shows that only lasted one season. For context, our podcast has lasted 9 seasons, and all those shows are better than what we're putting out.
We've had some discussions about TV shows that either you liked or I liked that didn't last very long. And we thought maybe we could cobble together a whole episode to discuss those shows. And it turns out there are a lot of one season wonders that I really enjoyed that disappeared and that very few other people seem to even know about.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about like saying goodbye to characters of long running series and how hard that is, or shows that were oddly ended because they weren't expecting to be canceled. And,
Right?
the main character looks like he's been shot to death, stuff like that. But when we started thinking about one season wonders, I mean, there were a couple, I don't think we've talked about them, where I thought they were really, really good and then was shocked that they were gone in less than a year or in 1 year. So we figured we'd do two things, talk about them, and then have a draft where we pick our favorite one season wonders. And I have a feeling we're both going to be open for that first overall pick.
It is very, very possible that's true. The one thing that I think we've talked about a lot, or the one show that at least I've mentioned a number of times, is the show Firefly. And
Yeah.
I know in that case, I'm not alone. First of all, I think you really like that show as well. But the sci-fi show Firefly literally only lasted one season. When it was up, when it was actually uh, when the network was releasing those shows, they didn't even release them in the order that they were supposed to be released, apparently.
Hmm.
But it still garnered, it really had, I guess, a small but really rabid fan base. And I think there were letter writing campaigns when it ended. And there was enough outcry that they actually were able to finance and put out a movie called Serenity, which was, I guess, basically the conclusion to this one season. But man, did I love that show.
You're right. It had a really rabid fan base. Makes me wonder a couple things. One, the star, I don't know if he ended up going on to another show. 'Cause it seems like a show that could have been saved by its fans, but it never was, obviously. But makes me wonder where all the cable channels and everything else of Firefly would have run for a much longer time.
Yeah, if there
Um,
was streaming, you're right. I think you would have seen it last longer because now you don't need the same kind of audience, I think, that you needed back
right.
in the early 2000s to maintain a show on a major network. Now it would be either on sci-fi or if shit, frankly, I could see this, that as like an Apple TV Plus or an HBO Max type of show that would have probably the same amount of viewers, but still be able to stay on the air just because everything is kind of fractured at this point. And I think it's just easier. There's just so many outlets and so many streaming services that are looking for content. It seems like it wouldn't stick around.
I don't know if this was the case, but sometimes these sci-fi shows are a little higher in budget because of either special effects or all the costumes or whatever makes them expensive. But yeah, I think Firefly would be a big hit these days if it was just launching.
Yeah, and I mean, when you see like if you go to comic conventions or pop culture conventions, and they'll get the cast together and they will pack those halls with people that just love the characters, love those actors. Most of them have well, they've all moved on. Obviously, it would be kind of silly if they kept going back to set. But I feel like Nathan Fillion, we talked about him. He's in the show The Rookie now. There was a show before that. I mean, he's definitely a leading man type, and he's got that kind of Han Solo personality that he takes pretty much with every show he goes to. But he's great, and Alan Tudyk has been in a bunch of sci-fi stuff, and Gina Torres, who was played like the first mate of the spaceship, she's done a lot of other work. I mean, they've definitely continued and had, I think, pretty successful careers. But if you talk to them, they were already, at least for years, they were ready to go back and do it again if they could. And now I think it's probably too late.
Yeah, and the other show that Nathan Fillion was Castle, which I actually got into for
Right.
a little while. It started to
Yeah.
wear on me.
Well, and here's so and it's not just sci-fi shows, although there are quite a few sci-fi shows that I think have done that. Have had one season, a season that seemed like it was pretty solid, but then they just didn't come back. And my guess is a lot of that does have to do with budget. But even some of the shows that were clearly low budget, but just had a cool premise, like lots of times you'll see a time travel show where there's not really a whole lot of special effects or anything. They do the time travel off screen, but a lot of those shows, even if the budget seems to have been relatively low, they don't last. There was a show that my son Tommy and I used to love. I mean, we watched it for the season it was on. It's called The Tomorrow People, and I think that was on FX or it might have been on Sci-Fi, but it was basically kind of a knockoff of the X-Men. It was about a bunch of mutant kids, and they were kind of a team, but they were also on the run, and there were people who hated them because they were different, that kind of thing. But it was pretty well done. It was pretty well acted, and that only lasted for a year. That was one that I really enjoyed, and was kind of appointment TV for Tommy and I back. It was probably almost 10 years ago now. But that one just disappeared. No notice, no nothing. No, no. We were just like, hey, did season 2 ever come on? And Googled it and find out. No, it got canceled.
And there's plenty of shows that fully deserve to be canceled after a year. Maybe didn't even
Sure.
deserve to have a year, but there are ones like, and I think you were into this one. For me, the one that stood out that I still miss to this day, and I haven't gone back and watched, so I wonder if it would hold up, is Brimstone, which starred Peter Horton, John Glover, and had Lori Petty in it too. I don't think I remember Lori Petty being in it, but it was I think a former detective who was let out of hell because all these evil souls had escaped and were wandering the earth. And I think John Glover was the devil, which is a
Yeah.
perfect casting for him. I thought it was cool. And each episode, he was chasing a different bad guy, and oftentimes they were historical bad guys. I think who's the guy? Shoot, in London, killed prostitutes.
Oh, Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper.
Right.
I think that
Yeah.
might have been one of the ones who escaped and that sort of stuff. And it was probably hokey and special effects may not have been awesome, but it was entertaining. I thought it was a really, really good show, and it was gone after 1 year. So
Yeah, that is one that I did watch, regularly for the one season it was on. And I'm not even sure you and I talked about it because that was kind of in that gap where we weren't necessarily in touch all the time. But I very much enjoyed that show. That ran from 98 to 99. And Peter Horton was really good in the role.
yeah.
And again, the effects were subpar probably, but you didn't really need a lot of special effects for that kind of storyline. And yeah, that's another one. It just disappeared on us.
And
And
then I would guess that the show doesn't hold up, but I'm putting it down. And I think some of the stuff we watched because it may have fit in. This was back when you watched TV when it was broadcast. So there'd be
mhm.
nights that like I remember early on, like working nights and not being available, but then being home on other nights watching the kids and something will be on and it's you didn't have a lot of choices. You'd have maybe three or four choices because of the major networks. And the one that I got into briefly, which was I don't think I knew about his other movies, but it was The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., starring none other than Bruce Campbell. I think it's been pretty obvious that sci-fi westerns are not a good idea because Wild Wild West may be one of the worst movies ever, and this one had that sort of sci-fi element to it. It was definitely a western, but they'd have modern weapons and stuff. And I don't remember the premise all that much. I just think that Bruce Campbell is an incredibly entertaining actor, and it was a fun show. And like the others we're talking about, one and done. So.
Yeah, I did not see that show. I remember it, and I remember it got a hard advertising push. Like they were definitely, I think they thought probably because of Bruce Campbell that this was going to be their next hit. And it seems to me like it was a Fox show, or I'm not 100% sure about that, but I do remember seeing it advertised, and I never I don't think I ever saw an episode of it, which would probably, explain, or at least
Yeah.
partially explain why it didn't make it. Because if a lot of other people took that approach, it was all about ratings for sure, particularly back then.
Oh yeah.
But there are a couple, and I consider Firefly to be one of those that was just a huge mistake and just a bad call by a network. But there are a couple other shows that I think are even more well known for being that crazy decision to stop a show that seemed to really be just hitting its stride by the end of its first season. And that one of those, for me anyway, and I think for a lot of people, was the show Freaks and Geeks,
Hmm.
which is the show that really launched Judd Apatow as someone in that industry who could create really funny, really interesting TV and eventually movies, tons of movies. And Freaks and Geeks was just a kind of, I mean, it was a coming of age TV show about a group of high school kids and just how they were, trying to get through life. And I think it was set in the early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. But, it had a cast that you now see in movies and TV all the time. Jason Segel was one of the kid stars of that show. And, he's in Shrinking now, and he's been in, he's in the Muppet movies. He's just been all over the place. He's a guy you recognize on sight. Seth Rogen was in that show as another one of those kids. He had a little less of a role, but obviously he's a comedy juggernaut now. He's kind of like the Judd Apatow of the current day and age, I think. And then Linda Cardellini, she's not a superstar by any means, but she has been in so much TV. She's been in the Avengers movies. She just shows up and she can play all kinds of roles, and she's like a Swiss Army knife of an actress. But she was a great lead for that show, and I was really looking forward to seeing what happened to her as well as the other actors. But James Franco was in that show. Martin Starr, he's another guy you see in the MCU all the time. They were all young, so people didn't realize just what a murderer's row of actors they had. And you get to the end of that first season, and there's kind of a cliffhanger, and Linda Cardellini's character is leaving to follow the Grateful Dead on a bus, and you want to know what happens next. And unfortunately, we never got to find out. But that's definitely one of those shows that I think if you asked, most American TV viewers back at the time, and it came out its one season was in 1999. There's a lot of people who watched TV back then that would say, yeah, that's a show that they missed the boat. That we should have had at least a couple more seasons now.
I'm just scanning through the people who were in season one, and I think ones you didn't mention. I don't even know what role he played, but Ben Stiller apparently appeared in at least one episode.
Mm-hmm.
Shia LaBeouf, or however you pronounce him.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But you mentioned most of the others. And yeah, Linda Cardellini, I've seen her. Like, if you look at her and she's instantly recognizable. And I don't even know what shows she was in, but I think she's been in like all of them.
Yeah. She was in ER, for example. She was a main character for a long time in ER. Like I said, if you watch the Avengers movies, she's Hawkeye's wife in that. But there's 100. I'm sure if you looked her up on IMDb, you'd find that she's got a list of like 200 credits or 300 credits, and she, I don't know, she's probably late 40s right now, maybe something like that. But Apatow seems to be the king of those one and done shows too, because he did one. There was a show that I think it was the follow up for him to Freaks and Geeks called Undeclared, and it was another show he created. It was similar to Freaks and Geeks in the sense that it was following a small group of kids, except that they were basically freshmen in college, and it was supposed to be about their first year or two in college. It had some of the same cast members, and he ended up he kind of had this ensemble that he used not only in those shows, but they followed him to some of the movies that he did, that he produced or that he wrote. But Seth Rogen was in Undeclared. Jason Segel had a role in that. It was a recurring role. He wasn't a main cast member or anything like that. But Loudon Wainwright the third actually was in. He was in both Freaks and Geeks, and he was in an Undeclared. And I remember watching Undeclared when it came out, which was probably early 2000s, and I thought it was awesome. I thought it was almost as good as Freaks and Geeks, and I was really excited about it. And of course, then it also only lasted one season. So it's another one of those where you kind of wanted to know what happened to these kids, and you'll never find out.
Well, a very different type of cast, but it's a little surprising that it didn't last longer was Police Squad. Um,
Yeah, yes.
from early 80s starring Leslie Nielsen and all the sight gags and everything else that went along with the airplane movies.
And Naked
um,
Gun and
Naked Gun. One of my favorite lines of a review is the show had fast-paced humor that required viewers to pay attention, which audiences were incapable of in 1982. So I don't know what
God, was
what
that
made
show
us
that
incapable.
was
Yeah,
that show that
1982.
old?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I would have guessed that was around that same late 90s, early 2000s time period. I got that completely wrong.
And it's another one that I mean, that type of humor can be really hit or miss. And it also probably doesn't appeal to everyone. It's like when we talked to Doug Storm, we talked about how you sort of narrow your audience down. We're down to like maybe a maximum of 50 people in the world. I don't think Police Squad was that, but I've talked to people who just don't appreciate that slapstick humor. And then I don't talk to them
Yeah.
ever again because
Yes, yes. Although I may have outgrown it myself at this stage, because I got to say,
yeah.
because they just did a reboot or a remake, I guess, of Naked Gun, and I have not seen it, and I'm not really jumping up and down to go to at least to go to the theater to see it. I think I got to wait for that one to come out streaming free somewhere.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I love is it Liam Neeson is recast?
Yes,
I'll be
yeah.
really curious to see how he plays that role, but I will wait till it comes to TV. So
Yeah, I've seen a couple random reviews. It's definitely not a movie where you're worried about spoilers. So I've read a couple reviews, and they say kind of the standard refrain is he's very funny, even if they didn't love the movie or it's just kind of. I think some of the gags are a little tired, but I will definitely watch it when I can watch it at home. But I didn't feel like shelling out cash and going to the theater for it. But I didn't know that Police Squad. I didn't realize, first of all, that it was only one season, and I didn't realize it was that long ago. That just goes to show you how old we're getting.
well, I know you and I largely avoid research, but I did research in preparation for this. And one of the ones that struck me, so I found multiple lists of the best one season wonders ever. And I don't think anyone would remember this, but it also shows a difference in time. Like we talked about back in the day, you'd have to wait for it to actually just air on whatever night of the week it aired. And then when it went into syndication, you could watch it whenever you wanted. Well, whenever they showed it on those off channels. But The Honeymooners is listed as a one season wonder. It was meant to be a two-season wonder. They were going to do 78 episodes. They did the first season, which was 39 episodes, and Ralph, what was his name?
Ralph
Jackie
crammed
Gleason.
in,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Jackie Gleason decided that he didn't think it could maintain the quality, so he stopped after one season, although that was 39 episodes, which nowadays would easily be, depending on how many went. But I would have never ever thought that it was a one and done show, although again, a very different time period. And it's one of the most influential and memorable shows ever. We certainly make fun. There's like lines from it to this day, at least as old fuckers still cite.
I
Um,
literally yesterday said to somebody in my office, "One of these days, Alice," and she had no idea what I was talking about. But
so I just throw that out
that's
there as a,
amazing.
yeah.
I would not. I mean, because I would imagine that if you Googled, best or most influential sitcoms, it's probably in the top three, if not number one on a lot of lists. Along with like I Love Lucy and some of those other older ones. But I didn't know that it had only gone one season. And like you said, that's a lot of episodes compared to what you see these days. But I mean, shows had, they would get 30 or 40 episode orders when it was primarily network TV. I mean, that's not that long ago. 15 years ago,
Right.
20 years ago, you'd still see that many episodes for a season. So I had no idea. I would have thought that ran forever.
Yep, same exactly. When I saw that,
That's
I'm like,
crazy.
what? So,
Huh.
all right, any closing remarks before we get to drafting these things?
Yeah, the only thing that I can say, and unfortunately I don't have any answers, is I would love to know what the thought process is, what the meeting is like, where some executive decides, hey, we're not going to do season 2 of Firefly, or we're not going to do season 2 of Freaks and Geeks, or I mean, you just explained the Honeymooners. That had more to do with the star not wanting to do it, but that's a very unusual situation, and also such a long time ago. But I mean, how do you watch those? How do you watch 2 or 3 episodes of a show like the ones we've been talking about, or most of them anyway, and say, yeah, you know what? I don't think we're going to continue to make this. And I'm sure it's completely a bottom line issue. And with Firefly, I'm sure there were, special effects costs that you probably made it seem untenable. It's just amazing to me how those decisions get made. And I guess that's why, television and film, as much as you want it to be about art and being creative and getting the best people together to make a product, it almost never works. When you get something that works, it's such a miracle that you get more than, just a taste of what could happen with the right actors and right directors and writers and all that other kind of stuff. And everything could be perfectly okay. And then someone says, you know what, we've looked at the bottom line and we're not going to do this thing.
And I'm sure that that is what drives most of the decisions. And I have no idea if the music industry and TV industry are similar, but I've been reading the book Sellout, which focuses on punk and hardcore bands
Oh,
that
yeah.
were accused of selling out. And what's really interesting is, like, some of these bands have gone on to be incredibly influential, or they were a band's band where, everyone thought they were fantastic. And for whatever reason, they didn't make it. And sometimes it's who you knew. Like, some of these bands had an exec who really pushed them and tried to promote them. And then they would either get fired or the company would be bought out and they'd have a change and they no longer had their advocate at the high level. So I'm sure bottom line was the big driver, but I think sometimes there's just these things that change, whether the star wants to move on to something else
Yeah.
or you just don't have the same support. But us as viewers, I mean, I feel like we feel like we're really deprived of having a chance to see what we thought was a quality show. No, I'm not saying that Briscoe County would have been, fantastic TV, but it was enjoyable. Firefly, though, I haven't found anyone who doesn't think that that show wouldn't have been like
Yeah.
just really quality TV for a long time if they'd let it go.
Yeah, the ones that's what I think we wanted to talk about today. I do think there are some shows that I understand why an executive might not get it, particularly with
Yeah.
some of the comedies that I think you and I might end up talking about here when we talk about a draft. But so I get some of that. You look at a sketch comedy show. I mean, there's some sketch comedy shows that I absolutely love that I know people who just think they're ridiculous and would never watch them. And so sometimes I think it's that. It just, they don't understand the audience that's out there, that kind of thing. But I still would love to be a fly on the wall to hear somebody say, yeah, I don't think that Freaks and Geeks thing is going to work out.
Just so you know, I avoided a really bad joke by saying, "Are you sure you don't want to be a firefly on the wall?" But boom.
Yeah, you definitely. I wish you had avoided it a little more.
Bite me.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. So, do you want to do a one season wonder draft?
I do. Mainly
All
because
right.
that's what we planned on doing.
Yes.
So, what
I'm
would you have done if I'd said no?
well, I don't know. I would have mumbled a little bit and then, cursed you out, and then I would have had to edit all that out. And
I'm just following up on your comment from last night. I'm just trying to create as many stingers as possible. One of these episodes when we're totally out of ideas, it's just going to be all stingers. An hour of
I,
stingers.
all right, so we're going to do a serpentine draft of our favorite one season wonders. I have flipped a coin, and you are going to call it,
Tails.
and it's tails. So you get
Yes.
to decide if you want to pick the very first show or whether you want the second and third picks in our serpentine draft.
All right, I'm feeling generous this morning, and I'm going to give you the first pick because I do believe, while I definitely appreciate uh, Firefly, which I assume would be the first pick, I know you're a bigger fan than I am, so I feel like I should give you the opportunity. If you pass on it, that's your call. But you got one, I got two and three.
All right. Well, I hate to be that predictable, but I am absolutely that predictable. I am going to take Firefly. It is, first of all, it's one of the best sci-fi shows I've ever watched, and that includes things like Star Trek. I mean, I was a Star Trek guy. Firefly is much better than Star Trek, and it's probably partially just because it was, it's a newer show, relatively speaking, anyway. But I think the acting was better. I think the relationships were better. I think it was more fun. It was funnier. It's also a show that, because it was only 14 episodes, and I think each of them is roughly 40 to 45 minutes because they were, it was an hour-long show with commercials on regular TV. I watch that season one of Firefly, the sole season of Firefly, at least one time a year with my son Tommy. Right?
Very cool.
We did our annual viewing of it just a few weeks ago. We were like, hey, you're leaving for college soon. We got to watch Firefly before you go. So what we do is we watch all of the episodes of Firefly, and then we watch the movie Serenity. And we usually watch it over like a weekend. So we'll start Saturday early in the evening, and then we'll watch it all the way through till Sunday. So maybe even if only for that reason, Firefly is the number one pick in the draft.
And if you're new to the show, listening for the first time, I'd encourage you to go back in time to August 21st on our website and check out the blog that Tom wrote about taking his two sons to college. Because that's why that pick, that's why I conceded the pick to Tom, because usually I say, fuck you, I'm taking the best thing.
And you will in the future.
Yeah. But this time I knew that connection with his son, and I thought it was the right thing to do to let him have it. But for a very moving, very powerful essay, check out Tom's blog that we posted on August 21st.
Well, thank you for saying that.
You bet.
So you're
All
up.
right.
Picks
I
two and
am.
three.
I'm number two is easy for me. I'm going with Brimstone. I think it may or may not have lasted, but it's one of my favorites. Preparing for this episode just got me thinking about that series, which I'll have to figure out where it's streaming. But I started the Jim Butcher series to read about the wizard detective that he
Dresden.
is, Dresden, yeah, which is also I think it was. I'm not sure. Damn, I should have prepared. I don't know if Dresden was a one season wonder.
I don't
I'm,
know.
I'm going to err on the side of picking the damn thing. I'm going to take the Dresden Files.
Oh, you bastard. There were a few I didn't mention in our conversation because I just wanted to keep them close to my vest. And that
Yeah,
was
and
one of them. That's
I
a
looked
great
up a
one.
couple that turned out they were more than one season. Like Alphas, I think it was on Prime. I can't remember. It was two seasons. I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
enjoyed that one. So that was out. So yes, I'm going to go with the theme there. So Supernatural. So you
Yeah.
got Brimstone, which I really enjoyed. Dresden Files, which I think I watched most, if not all of, and I thought it was the same thing. Well acted, great story. And I discovered that I'd never read any of the books. I went all the way back to the first one, reading that one now. And we'll plow through. I think he's got like 14 or 15 books. So good stuff.
Yeah, Dresden Files was one of those I was keeping hidden and didn't mention because I thought you liked that show as well. I That is one of those where I think you have so much source material. You have such a
Yep.
great casting choice in the guy they picked as Dresden. He doesn't really look like how he's described in the book, because in the book he's like 6'5" and really like skinny and almost scarecrowish. But the guy who plays him in the series is fantastic and just has the kind of smart ass. It's a lot like Mal in Firefly. He's one of those characters, and I think most of us are drawn to that kind of Han Solo-ish, roguish guy, and that's definitely him. Love that show. Can't for the life of me figure out how they didn't think they could make many, many more episodes of that. Now, to be fair, that is an older show. I think the author has written, Butcher's written at least 10 novels about that character since the show got canceled. Like,
Yeah.
he's just cranked out more and more stuff. In fact, I will let you know, I think his newest Dresden novel is supposed to come out at the end of this year. Like, there's another one on its way.
When I did a quick search, it said Dresden number 18 coming out
Yes.
soon. So
Yeah. I did the same thing as you. I didn't read the books until after I watched the TV show, and then I caught up, and I've read them all, and I'm really waiting for that next one. But that's a really good call. You did snake that one from me. I was going to throw Dresden Files in there. Another one. So we're now up to pick number 4.
yep.
Another one that I didn't mention, and I don't necessarily think you would have picked this one because I'm not 100% sure you've seen the show, but it actually is it's consistent with picking Firefly because I would watch it with Tommy. There's a show called Wayne, and that's the show that I would watch. We basically watched that series, that season, every year since we discovered it, except not Tommy, my son Jake. Jake loves Wayne. It is just an oddball. It is a coming of age type of show, but it's about a guy who has a lot of emotional problems, has difficulty containing his penchant for violence. But he also has this like code of honor, and he gets in fights all the time. He gets beat up all the time, but he's always just trying to do the right thing. And it is a show that I wish so much that they had done at least another episode or another season or two. The problem being is kind of like with Freaks and Geeks. If you cancel it, you can't really return to it because these kids get older and they become adults. And the 2 leads of Wayne are way too old now to try to play, high school kids finding their way around, life. But if you ever get a chance to see Wayne, it is streaming now. I think it's on Prime. I own the DVD set for that series, and I also own it digitally because I wanted to make sure that if I lose either one of those, I have another version of it. It's the same way with Firefly for me. So my pick for the draft, the 4th pick, is the TV show Wayne, and then my 5th pick is going to be Freaks and Geeks.
Nice. Well, this is where not preparing really starts to bite you in the ass. All right. I could have probably waited till the last pick, but I will take Briscoe County Jr. because it is one I mentioned. You got to love the chin. Thought he was entertaining in it. And then I'm going to take My So-Called Life just for the actors in it. It's one you didn't mention, so I'm not sure if you're going to go there, but it's hard not to pick something with Claire Danes in it.
Yeah, I was going to go there. You pulled another one from me. That's one of those shows that I didn't realize was only one season, because a lot of people talk about that show as being kind of influential, and I just always assumed that it had multiple seasons, and I was really shocked to see that on the list when I was doing my research, that it is one of those one season wonders. And as you said, huge fan of Claire Danes, and I really did like that show a lot.
All right, Mr. Either more prepared or less prepared than me. What do you got?
I'm going to go with a detective show called Stumptown. Weirdly, pretty much all of these shows are shows that I ended up watching with my kids, and mainly with my sons. For some reason, Stumptown's based upon a graphic novel. It's based upon a comic book. It was about a woman who is a private detective in Portland, Oregon. And in the book, as in the TV show, Portland is very much a character in the show. The TV series came out in 2019, and the star was Kobe Smulders, she was in How I Met Your Mother. She's the dark brunette, real pretty woman. She's also in, Actually, she's been in the MCU too. She's played roles in the Avengers movies as well. She's got a really good kind of smart ass quality to her that you see in How I Met Your Mother. And it was really done well in Stumptown. And Tommy and I started watching that because we had read, I owned like the first volume or two of the graphic novels. And I thought, oh, this seems worthwhile. And I really like her. And it absolutely was. It was a great, great show. And I was really shocked that it didn't get past season one. So
Nice choice.
thank you.
Don't know it.
Yeah, you should look for it. It's again, if you like her at all, she's just I like her. I think she's got a cool personality. I think she's really funny, and that was a great kind of spotlight for her. So that is pick number 8, and my pick number 9 is I believe it was an Apple TV Plus show. It's called Station 11.
I've heard of that. Yep.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi show. It's a post-apocalyptic thing. It's based upon a really, really good novel. I just thought it was really well done. It really kind of captured the angsty feel of the novel itself. And it was really set up, I thought, to do at least 2 or 3 good seasons without, I guess, outpacing the source material. There was plenty in the book that they still hadn't gotten to, as far as I'm concerned. But I really liked that book, and I really thought that the TV show did a nice job of capturing all of that. So Station 11, and I am going to check real quick, is on HBO Max, is where that show is still streaming because it was an HBO Max original. Weirdly, also had Lori Petty in it, but the lead was Mackenzie Davis, who, if you see her, you'll recognize her. She's been in a lot of stuff, and truthfully, kind of Kobe Smulders-ish. Now that I think about it, her character isn't really that kind of wisecracking person in this show, but she did a really nice job in the role, in the lead role of Kirsten Raymond was the name of the character. But I do recommend it, and I think it's a good pick for the draft.
All right. This seems to be a fitting choice for me to close out my portion of the draft. The show that I've never seen and barely heard of, but it's
All right.
it's as I researched, I decided I'm going to watch this damn thing because the one season wonder from I think 2009. It has really great reviews. It's apocalyptic like, but it's called Flash Forward. And the actors and actresses in it look intriguing. Joseph Fiennes is in it. John Cho, who I like a lot. He was in, I think, the remake of Hawaii Five-0 and some other stuff.
Oh, yeah, I know who you mean.
Yep. And then one of my favorites from Happy Ending, Zachary Knighton, the guy who got left at the altar in Happy Endings is in it too. So
yeah, he's good.
Yeah. So it's this idea that Los Angeles, going about their life, 2 FBI agents are chasing a car, and it sounds like everyone in the city blacks out for 2 minutes, and then when they wake up, they can't. They're very, very short-term memory. So it's this idea of everyone has essentially lost their memories, and they're trying to figure out how to pull back together to understand. It sounds very intriguing, very science fiction-y. I went and looked. There's based on a book from 1999, which I'll probably check out, but I don't know much more than that, but it sounds like something I would like, and a lot of disappointed viewers who were upset when it was canceled after 1 season.
That sounds like a post facto to me. You're gonna have to watch it and report
I will,
back.
damn it. Yep.
It does sound interesting. I'm also never heard of it. I don't know anything about it. Well, I had a couple. It's funny. I had a couple others that I was prepared to use in the draft that we didn't talk about at the top that I probably deserve mentioning only because I think they fall in that category of one season wonders where the executives probably just didn't get it or just didn't think that the public would want to watch more than a season. One of those, though, is really seminal, and you hear a lot of people talk about it as being influential, and that's the Ben Stiller show. Obviously Ben Stiller became and is still a big deal in comedy in particular. But Judd Apatow was a writer on that show before he did Freaks and Geeks and all that other stuff. Bob Odenkirk He was in that show. Janine Garofalo, Andy Dick, like it was a lot of those indie comics kind of guys, and I think that show gave them all a start in TV. And that was only one season, but I kind of get it because if you've ever watched an episode of it, it's one of those sketch comedy shows that can get a little bizarre, and I can see it. An executive in his 50s or 60s thinking, "What the fuck is this?" There's no way people are going to buy commercial time on a show like this. And there was another one, and I'll just throw it out there. I only watched an episode or two, but there was if you remember, there was a show called Greg the Bunny with Seth Green. That it's kind of like Alf. That's what made me think of it because there was a puppet, there was a bunny. It was like all in his head. It was really weird. But if you Google and look for those kind of one series or one season wonders, it pops up on some of the lists because I think it had a very small but rabid following for Seth Green and Greg the Bunny.
It shows up on almost every list that I pulled up.
Did it? Yeah, me
Yeah,
too. I saw most of them anyway. And I watched a little bit of it. I didn't love it, and it wasn't going to make my draft for sure. But it's fun. I think comedies. I think it's in some ways it's harder for a comedy to get past that season for completely different reasons than the sci-fi reason, which is usually money. I think with comedies, it's just if you get the wrong exec, they just don't get it, and that's probably
right.
really hard.
All right, that wraps up our draft of one season wonders. What's next, Mr. Polachek?
We are ready for Loft of Wisdom.
You better open up your eyes, babe, because fools do get wise.
Loft of Wisdom is where Tom and I essentially recreate what we did in college, where we think of something really funny or smart or clever or something, write it on our old lofts that we had in our college fraternity room. Tom and I have talked many times over the years about wishing that we had taken a picture or saved that in some way.
Yeah.
We haven't. We made an appeal to our friends to help us remember anything that was on it. They haven't helped.
So-called friends.
So-called friends, damn it. So we decided to create a new Loft of Wisdom. This one's virtual, and all of the quotes that we add are on our website. So barring our website disappearing mysteriously, we should be able to access these for a long time, as can you. So what is your quote to add to the loft this week?
I am going back to the first pick of the draft. I'm going back to the show Firefly. I'm going back to Captain Malcolm Reynolds, who is the captain of the Serenity, Nathan Fillion's character. And I think he only said it once. It was probably in the first or second episode of the show, but he looks somebody right in the eye and says, "I aim to misbehave."
That's
And
awesome.
I love his delivery of it is so much better than I could possibly give it. But it is when I hear those words, I think it really captures the essence of that whole show. And I also think it is absolutely something we would have put on the loft back when we were in that corner double.
I think we would have been fighting over the marker to see who could write it
Yeah,
up
I think
and take
you're right.
credit for it. Because even when I read it in preparation for this recording, I laughed, and I was like, I knew I was going to laugh when you said it out loud. It's a great, great choice. So Tom, as always, was ready before me. So when I saw his quote, I decided I wasn't going to try to match it as far as a quote from a TV. So I took us in a slightly different direction, which was a one-time wonder, a one album wonder from a band that I've heard of many, many times, and had, for whatever reason, never gone and listened to them. But the band is Mother Love Bone out of Seattle. They essentially were a lead singer who passed away shortly after, I think right before the album was released or right after, which is why they were a one-hit wonder. The other members of the band went on to form Pearl Jam, which was a defining force for grunge. And I think this is a band that's sort of looked at as a what if, because that first album was fantastic. And the lead singer's voice was a little more in line with what became hair metal. I'm not saying that they were hair metal. It's just his voice was not as grungy as the sound that came out later. So people have always wondered if this band had persisted And their sound had become more the defining sound coming out of Seattle. Might it have changed music history? Who knows? But the song that I like and have been listening to nonstop is Crown of Thorns. And my quote is asking the question, you ever heard the story of Mr. Faded Glory? Say, he who rides the pony must someday fall.
Mm.
There's tons of great quotes throughout there, but it just seems fitting. He wasn't Mr. Faded Glory. He was, had this shining light and then unfortunately passed away, which is, a sad outcome for many bands. So that's it. Going with a one-hit wonder. Not quite as moving as yours or as funny as yours, but I think a great quote nonetheless.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought about the whole lead singer being more of a hair metal type of singer because
Yeah.
you know my understanding of the history of that time period was that grunge was really a reaction to hair
Yep.
metal, and I absolutely, and I didn't know this about him, and I've only probably listened to that album once in my life, so I don't know much about it. But if it was more hair metal, like would it have kind of slowed or prevented the actual rise of Nirvana and Pearl Jam
Yep.
and the actual grunge sound? So that is very interesting to me. I assume somewhere somebody's written about that. I'd like to get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's not an original thought of mine. I read up on him and I do need to do a little more reading, but and I may be simplifying a little bit, but his voice was very different, very appealing to me because I was into the hair metal stuff. But I liked grunge. It wasn't as
Yeah,
much my thing. So I think that's why I avoided them. I just assumed they were, an
yeah,
early influence on grunge, which they were, but in a very different way. So
yeah. I didn't realize the difference. Truthfully, I thought it was just the version 1.0 of Pearl Jam. So I am going to go back and listen to that now. We are now ready for staff picks.
Just around the corner from you.
With staff picks, we try to recommend something that's either out now or soon or recently. We want to recommend books, music, films, any TV for that matter, anything that we may have run across or that we anticipate is coming out and we're really looking forward to. So, what is your staff pick for this episode?
all right, I went with the song, and I mentioned earlier, just a second ago, that I can't stop listening to Crown of Thorns. The other song I can't stop listening to, and I'm trying to figure out why, because it's slow. It's kind of depressing. Oh, okay, that's the stuff I listen to. So
I was wondering where you were going with that. I was
uh,
like, have you met you?
yeah, it's a new single by Dylan Alt, Ault. He had another song that I was into for a while. I think it's called "Taken for a Fool." I may slightly have that wrong, but it's close to that. He just released an acoustic version of the song "The Thicket," and I love it. I think it's a really great song. What I like is I thought at one point that he had a female singing with him at times, and then at other times, but he's double tracking his own voice. And one time he has it really high, another time he has it low. I just think
Hmm.
it's really well done. I think he's a up and coming songwriter. He's out of a small town in Ohio, which I've never even heard of, and I grew up in Ohio. It's called Custonia. So I think he's an emerging force that if he can hold it together, should be able to make a little more noise in the singer-songwriter space.
Costonia sounds like the factory town for a Walmart.
It does.
I've never heard of it either. I've driven back
Or
and
a
forth across all.
or a Costco competitor.
There
Don't
you
go to Costco, go to
go to
Custonia.
Custodia. So my staff pick, I actually brought up, or at least brought up in an oblique way earlier in this episode. I went to go see Nobody 2, which came out on August 15th. This episode is going to be dropping in September. So it may not still be in the theaters, but Nobody 2 may already be streaming by the time you hear this. And I would tell you it is worth seeing. I loved the first movie, Nobody, which starred Bob Odenkirk as kind of a mild-mannered guy who turns out to be a trained killer. That's become kind of a subgenre of action movies these days. Really liked the first one. Really, because I liked it so much, I wanted to see the sequel. Although I was worried. I was worried that he might not pull it off. He's 4 years older. Hell, he had a heart attack the year that the first movie came out. So I didn't know what to expect. They really did a nice job of it as a sequel. It's not as good as the first one. The first one had a lot of stuff, reveals, and twists that you really didn't expect. It's kind of hard to recreate all of that. But I really like Nobody Too. By the time you hear this episode, it may be streaming. It may be in that limbo between when it's out of the theaters and when it becomes streaming. However, look for it wherever you can. I would recommend that you go see it. I really enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of Bob Odenkirk. As I think I mentioned earlier in the episode, I did write a blog mainly about Odenkirk, but also about this movie. And that should also be coming out, or should have come out in early September. So keep your eye out for that as well.
And just to keep, pumping your blogs, that's another great blog of yours. I know I was talking about the one about dropping your sons off your sons off at college. The Odenkirk one is really entertaining and informative. So
thank you, man.
you're really
I'm
raising
getting
the
all kind
bar.
of fucking
Raising the
compliments from
bar,
you today.
asshole. I gotta.
All right. That's better. Next up for us is playlist picks.
Yeah. Tom and I, this is sort of the center of our podcast. It's the center of our relationship for, all intents and purposes. We do a playlist for every season. Tom and I will choose one song each, add it to the playlist. They're available on all the streaming services, Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple, and Amazon. We try to align it with the theme of the show, and we secretly compete for who has the best connection and the best choice. But that doesn't matter because you can listen to all the songs on the Third Song and Season 9 playlist. What do you got?
I have for the playlist a song that came out in 2015 from Langhorne Slim and the Law. The album was The Spirit Moves, but more importantly, it's in the soundtrack of the TV show Wayne, and figures prominently at the very end of episode 2. Probably one of the most touching scenes that you'll find in that whole show. The song is called Changes, and it's basically a no dialogue scene of Wayne and his girlfriend, or soon to be girlfriend at that point. And it's just this touching view of him learning how to be, kind of kind and put aside his ego in favor of trying to help out his girlfriend. And I don't want to spoil it because I really want people to see that show, even though I guess we're never going to get another season. But the song is Changes from Langhorne Slim. Love the song. Really nice, pretty, slow-paced ballad of a song. And I think it is placed well on the Season 9 playlist.
I agree. I love Langhorne Slim, but I'm going to take us in a completely different direction. So depending on which order we put these in, our listeners may be in for a bit of a shock. So there's what was the band? Rise Against was a chapter I just finished in that book. Won't get into it too much, but one of their albums, they released it with the major label debut. They released it and it didn't really make many waves. So they decided to release an acoustic song that was very unlike their other stuff. It became really, really popular to an audience that they didn't expect. And one of my favorite lines from that chapter was the lead singer of Rise Against saying he laughed every time he thought about some soccer mom buying their album, plugging it into the car, cranking it up, thinking that it was all this acoustic stuff. And the first song is this hard rock and punk song. And he's like, just imagine their reaction and likely crashing their car, which was just a funny thought. So if we put the Langhorne Slim song first and then we choose put mine afterwards, it might have a similar reaction. So I went with the Slipknot song. Yes, The Devil and I, which is one of my favorite songs from them, if not my favorite song from them. It's rocking. It's the sort of stuff that Tom doesn't like, although it has that thing you saw with Beartooth, which I know you also don't like, where there'll be melodic in places and then segue into their rocking, screaming sections. It's a catchy song, pretty heavy, and it, of course, is in allusion to Brimstone. My choice in the draft, my first choice, and also one of my favorite one season wonder shows ever. So check out The Devil and I on our playlist.
Yep, and you can find our playlist, even The Devil and I from Slipknot. Uh, they will all be streaming wherever you get your music. So you can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon Music. When you can, please listen to all of our playlists. We have seasons 1 through 8 are also streaming in the same places, and you can follow season 9 as we build it from our first episode to our last.
Yep. That brings us to the end of episode 2 of season 9. So while many of you wish that we had ended after one season, we're still rolling long enough to talk about one season wonders. The third song in is recorded in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Joliet, Illinois.
You can email us with any questions or comments or suggestions at thirdsongin@gmail.com.
You can also communicate with us directly through our website, thirdsonginpodcast.com. The website also has links to staff picks, the Loft of Wisdom. When we're fortunate enough to have a guest, we include all their information on the As Mentioned page on our website. Lots of good information there, updated almost daily. Thirdsonginpodcast.com.
Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. Rate and review us. Give us all your goddamn stars. Shell them out. There's no reason to hold on to those stars. Give them to us. You can find us on all of the places that have podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Podcast and Amazon Music and YouTube Music.
Please download, follow, rate, and review our playlists. As we mentioned, available on all the same places that our podcast is. We have a lot of good stuff out there. Playlists for each season, special playlists whenever we have a guest on. You can find all of them by searching for Third Song In.
And please use word of mouth. Let people know about us. I think that's an underrated way for people to find out about our podcast. And we would like you to tell people if you like us. We do have a Facebook page. We've got Instagram and Blue Sky accounts. You can follow us on those social media outlets as well.
We've talked a couple times about the blog that Tom and I write for the website and for the podcast. You can subscribe to that blog on Substack. You can also read it directly on our website.
You've been listening to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Thanks for listening. Download the, I don't know. Also, do whatever the fuck you want. I don't know.
All right,
so
that takes us to, dude,
man,
I thought I beat you. I was like, he's not talking yet. I'm in.
I know. Fuck me.
All right, we did it, man.
Yeah, did we?
I think so.
Because I don't know about this one.